Now, we can work on the commands that will allow us to save to two lists, and we will also work with the grid control and the rules engine. First, I will place a button control. This control will be used to save the form data to the list. In AppForms, you can save to more than one list. There is no restriction on the number of data sources that can be used in a single action. I will change the button text to save and change the button name to btn save. Once I'm done with the final formatting of the button control, I can now go to the Data Sources panel to create a new data source. I will have to create a new SharePoint data source to save the data to the order list. I will click on Create Data Source button and select SharePoint as the data source type. This will show us all the lists and libraries available in the current site. I will select Orders as the list where I want to save the data. Now, I will create an insert command that can be configured to insert data to the order list. Clicking on the Add button will bring the screen where I can map the list columns to the controls in the form. As you can see that the autocomplete text boxes will provide you with the control name selection. The ID column here is an auto-generated column. If you map a control to this column, it will return the new ID that will be generated after you insert the record. The columns are displayed in two pages here, so you will have to open the second page to map the full columns. Once you are done with the column, to control mapping, you can click on the OK button and return to the command screen. I want to execute this command when the user clicks on the Save button. So I click on the Manage Execute Rule button and select the btn Save button on click event as the trigger for this insert command. I click on the Create Rule button and then Finish button to complete the wizard. We can now move to the grid control configuration. The grid control has its own data source created when you place the control in the form. To start off with the dynamic grid configuration, you have to go to the Data Sources tab in the Properties pop-up and click on the link, New Data Source Configuration. Then select the data source type as SharePoint. Now it will take you to the screen where you have to define the grid columns and its control types. The first column is the product category. This will be a combo box that will be displaying the details from the category list. The next column will be products. This will be another combo box. But this combo box needs to refresh the data each time the category changes, so I will define the base type of this column as composite column. The next two columns will be quantity in unit and rate, which will be of the control type label. This is basically to make sure that the values are read-only. If required, we can also place a text box and disable it, but here I am going with a label control to demonstrate different control options available in the dynamic grid. If you see the names that I give for each column, it has a prefix of the column control type and column name. This is just a standard that I am following to know the column type, as I had explained before. I will configure the quantity column as a text box. The total column will also be defined as label, so that it is read only. Now we can configure the category column. Clicking on the Properties button will bring the Properties panel as a pop-up. The combo box has a property, Named Items, under the Data Sources section. Select SharePoint as the data source type and click on OK button. Select Categories as the list. We need to display all the values from the list to the combo box, so we will skip the criteria screen and click Next. Here, I will select the ID column as the value member and the category name column as the display member. I will click on the Finish button to complete the combo box configuration. Now we can configure the Products column. As this is a composite column, we will have to have the criteria for display displaying the combo box. The criteria will be the selection of a category, so I will add the criteria as the CMB category value not equal to 0. If this condition is satisfied, I need to display the products combo box. Now that I have added the criteria and the control, I can configure the combo box configuration pointing to the products list. We will select the data source type as SharePoint, and then select products as the list. We will have to filter the data in the products based on the value the user has selected in the categories combo box. So I will add the criteria in this screen. Category equals to CMB category. In the next screen, I can select the value member and display member for this combo box. Finally, I will select the sort option to sort the list based on the product name. Clicking on the Finish button will complete the configuration for the products combo box. Close all the pop-ups and come back to the dynamic grid column definition screen. From here you can change the properties of the columns as required. I will change the alignment of the rate column and the amount column. Once I click Next button, after I am done with all the column formatting, it will take me to the next page, where I can select the site where I have my order details list. In this screen, we will select the SharePoint list as order details list. This is the list where I want to save the order details. I will select the command type as Insert and click on the Add button. I want to save the order ID from the orders list so that I can maintain the relationship. This command will be executed only after the orders list insert, so the TXT order ID text box will have the new order ID generated from the orders list. So, I map this text box to the order ID column. I don't need the order details ID in this scenario, so I will leave this column unmapped. I will complete the other column mapping and click on the OK button. I can now go to the Manage Execute Rule form and select the same Save button as the trigger for this command. As this button has the orders command insert mapped to it first, it will insert to the orders list first and then insert to the order details list. I will click on the Finish button to complete the grid configuration. Now let us save the form and then go to the preview to see how the form looks now. We can see that the grid has rendered the columns with the controls we created. I will change the margin of the grid so that it is in the center of the page. Now that I have the insert commands configured, it's time for us to test the grid combo boxes and the save logic. I can type in the values to the form fields. When I enter the zip code, we can see the web service working. Now when I come to the grid and select the category, you can see that I have a combo box for the products column. Based on the value I select in the categories column, the products combo box will refresh. I will enter the quantity, but the totals will not be generated as we have not created the rule for this. We will come back and create the rules for the total calculation later. Now let's save the record and go to the list to see the saved reports. When I go to the orders list, I have one report created with the order ID 1. Now, When I go to the order details list, you can see that we have an order details created with the same order ID.